you choose to be the Empress?
They chose her. She's very old, Johnston. She's 17.
It's not so old, Your Majesty. What does
The last emperor.
Old
Leia.
You got it. Broadcast news. Two very different movies set in two very different worlds, with one thing in common. They lead this year's Academy Awards Derby with the most nominations, 9 for The Last Emperor, 7 for broadcast news. But we're not going to talk about the front runners on this special edition of our program. Instead, we're devoting the show to the surprise nominations, people in pictures we didn't expect to be nominated, and people in pictures we didn't expect to be overlooked. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. And on this special edition of the show, as Gene said, we're going to react to the recent Oscar nominations in a fresh way, we hope, by focusing not on who's going to win, that's done all the time, but on the surprises, those nominated and those not. Let's start right away with Best Actor, and the nominees are Michael Douglas, who also starred in the enormous box office hit Fatal Attraction, but was nominated as a slick stock manipulator in Wall Street. Marcello Mastroianni, the popular Italian actor, is a man who loved and lost in Dark Eyes. Jack Nicholson, a former Oscar winner, is a Skid Row drunk in Ironweed. William Hurt, a winner in 1986, is a handsome but dumb TV anchorman in Broadcast News. And Robin Williams, who played a motor-mouth disc jockey in Good Morning Vietnam. And I already hinted at one surprise on that list, the fact that Michael Douglas was nominated for Wall Street instead of Fatal Attraction, which was the second biggest hit at the box office last year. But for me, the big surprise in the category was the name of Marcello Mastroianni among the nominees. Mastroianni's been among the world's most popular movie stars for more than 30 years, but the movie he was nominated for, Dark Eyes, was a Russian-Italian co-production that may have received great reviews in this country. I sure liked it, and I think you did.
Not as much
as I did, but it only did fair business at the box office. In the movie, Mastroianni played a turn-of-the-century Italian businessman who was happily married before a trip to Russia, where he fell instantly in love with another man's wife. Mastroianni's performance was the best thing in Dark Eyes, and all the more so after a sort of surprise ending that reveals his character is even unhappier than we originally thought he was. My surprise about this nomination is that enough Academy voters saw and admired the film to put Mastroianni in there ahead of some big Hollywood stars who had a lot more clout.
I was surprised to find him in there because I wasn't as big a fan of the film as you mentioned. In addition, I still can't believe that Michael Douglas got it for Wall Street, which I didn't think was as good a performance as the one he did in Fatal Attraction. I think that it is much tougher to play on sort of an average guy getting trapped in a situation than a flamboyant Wall Street broker.
Yeah, but you could say, on the other hand, he was playing an average Wall Street broker instead of a flamboyant adulterer, so...
Oh, no, that was not average. that was a billionaire lizard.
So maybe the Academy just wanted to shy away a little bit from the controversy of Fatal Attraction and kind of honor him for both, but kind of by mentioning Wall Street.
I can't figure it out because they gave Fatal Attraction a Best Picture nomination, so it makes absolutely no sense. They went for the flamboyant role. They always do. They don't know if we should be judging this stuff. I tell you that every year. Now, there are two kinds of surprises at Oscar time. People you're surprised to see nominated and people you're surprised to see overlooked. And in the overlooked category, the losers of the nominations, the biggest surprise for me was that the Academy overlooked in this category, Best Actor, Steve Martin as the brainy, big-nosed fire chief in the sweet comic love story, Roxanne.
Oh, irony. Oh, no, we don't get that here. The people ski topless here while smoking dope, so irony is not really a high priority. We haven't had any irony here since about 83, when I was the only practitioner of it, and I stopped because I was tired of being stared at.
He's great verbally and physically. Now, I know it's difficult for comic performances to get Oscar nominations, and it's nice that Robin Williams got one for Good Morning Vietnam. But in my opinion, Steve Martin's work was just as impressive, even more of a character stretch, I think, than Robin Williams. His only liability, as I see it, is that Williams' film came out in December and Roxanne was released in June, and that's why Steve Martin got overlooked.
And the Academy doesn't have long memories. I agree with you about Steve Martin. Another name in this category I missed was Mickey Rourke for Barfly. I think if you're comparing drunks, he played a better drunk than Jack Nicholson and certainly deserved the nomination more.
Yeah, but Steve Martin, isn't that disappointing?
It was kind of a surprise.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, now for the best nominees for Best Supporting Actress, and they are the Argentine actress Norma Alejandro as the devoted nanny in Gabby, a true story, the story of a poet and author who triumphed over cerebral palsy. Ann Archer, the loving, trusting wife of Michael Douglas in Fatal Attraction. Olympia Dukakis, the veteran New York stage actress, so funny as Cher's tough-as-nails Italian mother in Moonstruck. Anne Ramsey, the bulldog-faced and pitbull-tempered mother whose son, Danny DeVito, wants to kill her in the comedy Throw Mama from the Train. And finally, Ann Sothern, the veteran TV star who played Lillian Gish's and Betty Davis' neighbor and lifelong friend in the drama The Whales of August. Now, two surprises here for me, the two Anns, Ann Ramsey and Ann Sothern. Ann Ramsey was very funny in Throw Mama from the Train.
Who's this? This is Cousin Patty. He's going to be staying with us for a while. Isn't that nice?
You don't have a Cousin Patty.
She's funny, but comedies, as we've said before, at least until this year, have been mostly stiff at Oscar time. Maybe the tide is shifting. As for Ann Sothern, she had a very small role. Here she talks to Lillian Gish in one of her few scenes in The Whales of August.
She started talking about dying. Dying? That woman is as healthy as a horse. I'm afraid it's her mind. Oh. Phelan, is it?
As for Ann Sothern, I think this may be one of those career nominations because Sothern has been so appealing in so many roles for so many years, especially on TV as The Ann Sothern Show, and she is quite popular in the Hollywood community. That's the only way that I can explain the nomination. It really isn't worthy, I don't think. The role isn't there.
Well, we were both surprised by Ann Sothern and Ann Ramsey. I was too. But for me in this category, there was also a missing name that surprised me, and that name is Angelica Houston, who starred in The Dead, the last film made by her father, the great director John Huston. Angelica Houston won in this category a few years ago for Prizzi's Honor as a mafia princess, but she showed a real range in a totally different role in The Dead as a middle-aged Irish wife who still mourns the death of the boy she loved when she was a teenager.
They say you never pass O'Connell Bridge without seeing a white horse.
Certainly Angelica Houston was superb in this movie, which everybody saw. Everybody wanted to see John Huston's last film, so I don't know why she was overlooked.
I can't figure it out either. Maybe the subject is too downbeat for them, but it was a fine performance, and she should have been in the category. Coming up next is surprises in the Best Actress category.
Edition on the big surprises last Wednesday when the Oscar nominations were announced. Let's move on now to the Best Actress category, and there were at least two nominations here that seemed to me, at least, like absolute foregone conclusions. They weren't surprises at all. They were Meryl Streep picking up her 7th nomination as an alcoholic street person in Ironweed, and Cher, who was nominated for the 2nd time for Moonstruck, where she played an Italian-American woman who was engaged to one man, but in love with his younger brother. The other nominees included Holly Hunter as the manic TV news producer, the brightest woman in the office in broadcast news. Glenn Close was nominated as the scorned woman who seeks violent vengeance in Fatal Attraction, and Sally Kirkland won a nomination for Anna, where she played a down-and-out actress from Czechoslovakia who sees her life falling apart in New York. And for me, the surprise in this category was Sally Kirkland, who was a popular and respected New York stage actress whose nomination for Anna was a real case of a dark horse in a low-budget film. In the movie, she plays a woman who was one of the biggest stars in Czechoslovakia until the Russian invasion of 1968, and now we meet her almost 20 years later in the movie in New York, where she has been reduced to playing understudy roles in plays that she has only contempt for, and has befriended a beautiful young Czech girl who also wants to be an actress.
George, I want you to meet my friend Christina. I would like it if you could come into the...
Anna, you know that Tanda doesn't want to see you.
Listen. Just let us in. I'll talk to her.
That is Polina Porzakova, the famous model there playing the younger actress. Now, I did not think Anna was a great movie. I had a lot of trouble with the last 3 or 4 scenes, which seemed to descend into hysterical and contrived melodrama, and actually threw away a lot of good stuff early in the film by losing my belief right at the end. But I did admire Sally Kirkland's performance in the movie, which projected a mixture of courage, humor, and a wonderful resiliency. What surprised me about the nomination was that Kirkland's victory came in a field where such contenders as Barbra Streisand were overlooked.
Well, that surprised me, too. I was not impressed with the film, and I don't know, it seems sort of like a setup role, the faded actress kind of thing. I think she did a good job. I would not have voted for her if I had been nominating, so I was surprised.
Here's one thing that may have happened, Gene. You know, actors nominate actors, just as directors nominate directors.
Right.
There's a lot in this role that every single actor and actress in the world is going to be able to identify.
It's sort of like it's like a chorus line only 20 years down the road in your career. Right. Okay. Well, to me, there are a couple of surprises by omission in the Best Actress category. One actress who deserved a nomination and one who didn't, but I thought might slip through. The one who got rooked, in my opinion, Faye Dunaway, so very good as the alcoholic in Barfly.
I can't stand people. I hate them.
The film may have been downbeat. People may have been put off by Mickey Rourke's performance, as I was. I thought it was too outlandish as her alcoholic friend, but Dunaway couldn't have been more captivating and fresh in the kind of role that so often has received Oscar nominations. Remember Jane Fonda just a couple years ago in The Morning After. I think Dunaway was just as good, if not better, playing a woman with a serious drinking problem. Now for the actress who I thought might have had enough clout in Hollywood to get a nomination for what I thought was an overblown performance. Roger mentioned her, Barbra Streisand as the abused woman pleading for her sanity in the courtroom drama Nuts.
Look, I don't know if you believe this or not, but I'm a perfectly sane woman. And I don't bother anyone who doesn't bother me first. You get it? And I don't want any more quacks running around in my head talking about my toilet training.
Contrived writing and not very good acting, in my opinion. Now, there was a big campaign for Streisand. She was robbed the last time out in this category for her very fine work in Yentl. I thought she might get sort of a consolation prize this time, but she did not.
She didn't, and I agree with you about Faye Dunaway. Of course, I love Mickey Rourke, too. I felt the two of them in that movie, they gave such a great ensemble job of creating that couple. And you can look then at Ironweed with Streep and Nicholson and see it's almost like the sweepstakes where two teams of actresses are competing in the same event. I felt that Barfly was a better movie and should have won, so I agree with you there.
When we come back, the nominations for Best Supporting Actor and some more of the 1987 nominations that surprised us and the surprises that were not nominated. Prize nominations, our next category is Best Supporting Actor. And the nominees are Albert Brooks, the comic actor, writer, and director, so very funny as the brilliant TV news reporter who can't make it as an anchorman in broadcast news. Sean Connery, the veteran street cop who shows Elliot Ness how to get Al Capone the Chicago way in The Untouchables. Morgan Freeman, the cunning pimp who toys with reporter Christopher Reeve in the drama Street Smart. Vincent Gardenia, so funny as Cher's superstitious, philandering father in Moonstruck. And finally, Denzel Washington, who played the murdered South African activist Steve Biko in Cry Freedom. And my biggest surprise of those nominated was Vincent Gardenia in Moonstruck. He was hilarious in a beautifully written role.
I like his face, Loretta. I don't like his lips. When he smiles, I can't see his teeth. What does he hide?
That's great screenwriting. You can't do any better than that, though, in acting either. I just thought that the women were getting all the pre-Oscar buzz from that film, Moonstruck. As for omissions, I was very disappointed to see that real-life Marine drill sergeant Lee Ermey was ignored for his remarkable work in Stanley Kubrick's Vietnam film Full Metal Jacket. Ermey is both hilarious and chilling as he addresses the fresh soldiers.
Oswald got off 3 rounds with an old Italian bolt-action rifle in only 6 seconds and scored 2 hits, including a headshot. Do any of you people know where these individuals learned how to shoot? Private Joker.
Sir, in the Marines, sir!
In the Marines, outstanding.
Maybe people thought it wasn't a performance because Ermey had been a drill instructor, but he was every bit as good, if you think about it, as the Oscar winner Lou Gossett Jr., also playing a drill sergeant in An Officer and a Gentleman. I'm afraid that Ermey lost because Full Metal Jacket was just not popular with the older Academy membership.
Well, here we have a double disagreement. I was not surprised that Vincent Gardenia was nominated. I fully expected him to be, and I was not surprised that Lee Ermey was overlooked because not only the older Academy voters, but a lot of other people had problems with Full Metal Jacket. I also don't think he was as good as Lou Gossett, who gave a much more fully rounded and more complicated portrayal.
Oh, gee, Roger, I mean, I'll tell you, when he is on the screen, I mean, there was no way that I lost interest in him whatsoever.
Well, he was good, that's for sure. I had some surprises, though, in this category of my own. I don't know if you agree with my surprises.
We'll see.
Mine included one of inclusion and one of exclusion. Among the nominees, I was a little surprised to see Denzel Washington's name on the list for his performance as the South African freedom fighter Stephen Biko in Cry Freedom. Washington did a good acting job in the movie, but Cry Freedom was a disaster 2 ways, with the critics and at the box office. The big objection was that Biko, allegedly the subject of the movie, had to play second banana to the white editor who wrote his story. And, of course, it's significant that Washington, for the whole movie, apparently is about his character, yet he was nominated in the supporting category. Here he is in a scene with Kevin Kline as a liberal white South African.
Place is full of drunks, thuggery, people so desperate for anything they'll beat a kid bloody if they thought he had 5 rounds.
Was that kid you a few years ago?
Yeah. Maybe more scared.
And another surprise in the Best Supporting Actor category, I was sort of surprised that Robert De Niro didn't get a nomination for his performance in The Untouchables, which was one of the 3 top box office hits of the year. Now, I didn't think that De Niro's Al Capone was among his best performances. I didn't really like him that much in the movie, but it was a big, showy role, and I did expect a nomination.
Somebody messes with me, I'm going to mess with him. Somebody steals from me, I'm going to say you stole, not talk to him for spitting on the sidewalk.
Given how much money The Untouchables made and what a reputation De Niro has in Los Angeles, I was surprised not to see him.
I wasn't surprised not to see him there because I think his role wasn't special. I think you picked it up, I picked it up, and I think everybody else obviously did too. As for Denzel Washington, I think there's sort of a logical error here. You're saying that the film wasn't properly about his character, and that may be true. There could be another film that would feature him more, but he definitely then belongs in the supporting category, and within that category, I think he did a fine job.
Let me ask you just one more question here as long as we're in this area. What about Kevin Costner? Now, this was a person who was considered to be very hot all year long in all kinds of movies. The Untouchables, No Way Out, cover of every magazine in town.
I know.
This was supposed to be his year, and he got overlooked in whatever category he could have been nominated.
Well, he should have been nominated in the Best Actor category for playing Ellie Ness. But you know what? It's a subtle, not flashy role. And I tell you, these actors are all the time. They go for the flashy stuff.
And that gets the nominations. When we come back, we both talk about our surprises in the most important category of all, the year's Best Picture. One category in our program of Oscar surprises, the Best Picture of the Year. The nominees did not include Beverly Hills Cop 2, which was the year's #1 box office winner, but I don't think that was a surprise.
No, that was a delight.
Right. The 5 finalists do include, however, the #2 movie at the box office, Fatal Attraction, with Michael Douglas as a husband who thinks he can get away with a one-night stand, and he is very, very wrong. Also, The Last Emperor, Bernardo Bertolucci's magnificent epic about the rise and fall of the last emperor of China, who began life as the ruler of hundreds of millions of people and ended it as a humble gardener. Broadcast News was the comedy with a serious message about the way television news is packaged and promoted, with anchormen sometimes only the good-looking front guys for brainier people behind the scenes. Hope and Glory was British director John Borman's memory of growing up in England during the Second World War, when even destruction was sometimes fun when seen through the eyes of a young boy. And the 5th nominee was Moonstruck, the comedy starring Cher and a large and colorful family in a story of love and loss, fate, and redemption. And for me, the surprise among the nominations was obviously Hope and Glory, the British film which started out slow at the box office and looked like an orphan film left behind by the former management of Columbia Pictures. But the movie continued to draw audiences wherever it played, and gradually the word of mouth spread, just as it did a few years ago for another unsung British picture that started slow, Chariots of Fire. The nostalgia in the film was British, but I guess it also struck a chord among American audiences. And maybe in a way that shouldn't have been such a big surprise, because every year the Academy always seems to find room for at least one prestigious British picture in there somewhere, and more often than not it goes ahead to win the Oscar too.
Right. Although I thought it was a good film, I did not think it was one of the 5 best films of the year. I didn't think it had a big promotional campaign behind it, so I too was surprised. However, the big surprise for me here is that Steven Spielberg's Empire of the Sun was not nominated. Now, I didn't like the film at all. I thought it was confusing, that Hope and Glory in particular gave a much better and more sophisticated portrayal of a child's view of war, but I wasn't sure the Academy would agree. I thought the Spielberg name and the grand scale of the picture might just carry the day. I'm glad the Academy could see through all the sets and all the crowds. It was more of a production effort than it was a real movie, and I'm glad the Academy saw through it.
What's interesting here is you have a little morality tale in which Hollywood comes out looking pretty good, because both Empire of the Sun and Hope and Glory have similar themes. Young teenage boys coming of age through the violence of World War II. Hope and Glory was made under the David Putnam regime at Columbia, which has been totally now discredited by the palace coup there, and Putnam is back in England. Steven Spielberg has all the clout in town, yet Hope and Glory wins, and Empire of the Sun doesn't. Interesting there, the clout didn't come through.
Well, what's interesting also is that I think in terms of looking over the whole list is that James Brooks was not nominated for director category. We're not going to go into depth into in the show, but he produced the film Broadcast News and was nominated for Best Picture. The screenplay was nominated. His leading actor and actress and supporting actor were all nominated, but he doesn't get it for directing. Now, I don't know what a director does.
Every year, there's at least one director who directs the Best Picture of the year, but he wasn't the best director. I can never figure that out.
That, to me, was an absolute shock.
Okay, so we're in agreement there. That's it for this week. Next week on Siskel and Ebert, we'll review some new movies, maybe one of next year's Oscar nominees, or maybe not. Among the contenders are Roman Polanski's new thriller Frantic, starring Harrison Ford, and Cop, with James Woods as a detective who believes in shooting first and then shooting later, too. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.